She was left alone in the square, ignored by her own family and despised by everyone. But when a stray dog stayed by her side, never once stepping away, everyone was shocked. No one imagined that this simple act of loyalty would change the fate of the entire village. The farmland known as Crestfield Meadows stretched across gentle hills dotted with oaks and tall grass, just a short drive from the nearest town. On a cool morning, tinted by the subtle pink glow of dawn, 12-year-old Lucy stood in the middle of the yard, twisting her fingers anxiously as she stared at the moving truck's open doors. Her parents, Thomas and Eleanor, were carrying boxes into what would become their new home, hopeful that this rural setting might offer peace and fresh opportunities for their daughter, who had recently been diagnosed with autism. Yet that optimism was overshadowed by the uncertainty Lucy felt every time she encountered new places and people. Thomas, a quiet man whose shoulders always seemed weighed down by worry, approached Lucy gently. "Sweetheart," he said, looking into her eyes, "do you want to see your new bedroom?" Lucy pressed her lips together, not quite ready to move. It wasn't that she disliked the house. Rather, the swirl of unfamiliar sounds and smells made her feel unsettled, as though her senses were tuned to a station full of static. Eleanor waited nearby, her tidy braids swaying in the breeze, hoping Lucy would show at least a spark of excitement. As they carefully guided Lucy inside, the furniture arranged by the movers appeared slightly out of place in the wide rooms. The wooden floors echoed with each step, an unnerving tap that made Lucy cover her ears. "It's quieter in the backyard, honey," Eleanor offered softly, leading her daughter toward a glass door that opened onto a lawn bordered by a ragged fence. At the far corner stood an old barn with its paint chipped from years of weather. Lucy stared at the structure, uncertain but curious. She stepped onto the grass and inhaled, noticing the pleasant scent of morning dew. Everything around her, from the tall oak by the driveway to the sound of distant cattle, felt foreign yet strangely inviting. Then her gaze fell upon a shape near the fence, something moving behind the pile of discarded wood planks. For a moment Lucy froze, uncertain whether to call for her parents. But her natural curiosity compelled her forward, step by step. Suddenly, out from behind the planks, a lanky dog emerged. Its fur was a blend of dark brown and white patches, ears slightly bent, and big eyes that looked a little tired. The dog stopped in its tracks, staring at Lucy with a quiet hesitance. She felt her heart beat faster, recalling moments when others, including extended family and classmates, had misunderstood her so completely that it felt almost like rejection. Lucy understood what it meant to be on the outside. She sensed the dog might feel the same. Without a bark or a growl, the dog took a few slow steps closer, then crouched low as though trying to seem unthreatening. Lucy crouched too, mimicking its posture. Something about that timid approach made her chest tighten with empathy. She extended a hand awkwardly, but the dog hung back, uncertain. Softly, Lucy murmured, "It's okay." Though her voice was almost lost in the wind, the dog's ears flicked, picking up the attempt at communication. From the kitchen window, Eleanor noticed Lucy's stance and alerted Thomas. They quietly joined her at the window, concerned that a strange dog might be unpredictable. However, they could see Lucy's posture was calm, so they waited, feeling their own hearts pound with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The dog took a few more steps, sniffed Lucy's outstretched fingers, and then gently touched its nose to her palm. Lucy blinked, struggling to process the rush of emotion. Something in that nudge felt like an acceptance she rarely experienced outside her immediate family. Meanwhile, at the other edge of Crestfield Meadows, a local caretaker named Mr. Nelson was making his rounds, distributing feed to livestock. He was the one who had found the stray dog a few months back, limping near the roadside. Despite his attempts to locate an owner or find someone to adopt, no one had stepped forward. Rumor had spread that the dog was too skittish, leading potential adopters to reject it. Some labeled it untrainable or too distant in demeanor, not understanding the traumatized past that likely caused its anxious disposition. Mr. Nelson still hoped there would be a place for the dog, he called it Harper, somewhere on these rolling fields, safe from scorn and neglect. In the days following Lucy's first encounter with the quiet stray, a subtle pattern formed. Each morning, Lucy would slip away from the boxes still to be unpacked in the house and wander out to the fence line, scanning the tall grass for movement. Sometimes she found Harper chewing on a stick or napping in a sunny patch. Other times, Harper seemed to be waiting, ears pricked at the sound of Lucy's footsteps. Those early greetings were wordless yet strangely intimate. Lucy might hum softly, letting her voice flow in a gentle melody that calmed her nerves, and Harper would sit, tail thumping cautiously, as though trying to hum along in spirit. Thomas and Eleanor, watching from a distance, felt relief and amazement in equal measure. "This is the most at peace she's seemed since the move," Eleanor confided to Thomas. He nodded, noticing how Lucy's usual tension appeared to dissipate when Harper was near. Although he wanted to bring the dog into the home, he worried about the unpredictability of strays. Would Harper handle Lucy's occasional meltdowns? Would Lucy handle Harper's unease? Still, he knew better than to break the quiet bond that was budding. One afternoon, Lucy ventured all the way to the barn looking for Harper. Inside, she found dust motes dancing in golden beams of sunlight, old farming tools leaning against the walls, and scattered footprints from raccoons that must have prowled at night. She felt a small flutter of excitement, imagining that perhaps Harper called this place home. Carefully, Lucy arranged a few crates into a makeshift seat, sat down, and tried to make sense of her swirling thoughts. She recalled the times she'd felt excluded at her previous school. The glaring looks, the whispers behind her back, the feeling that she spoke a different language. Yet here, with this dog, no words were needed, only presence. Harper eventually poked his head through the half-open barn door, tail gently wagging. Lucy's face lit up. She patted the crate, inviting Harper closer. It was an invitation to be part of her world, a space where she could express affection without the pressure of forced eye contact or complicated social rules. Harper, for his part, accepted the invitation with a cautious step, resting his muzzle on Lucy's knee. In that moment, child and dog both understood what it felt like to be misunderstood. Their bond formed not from grand gestures but from small, tender attempts to connect. Their unique friendship did not go unnoticed. Soon, rumors around Crestfield Meadows circulated about the rejected dog that had attached itself to a girl who rarely spoke in public. Some saw it as a curiosity. Others, particularly parents whose children had teased Lucy at her old school, couldn't comprehend how a dog that once cowered at the mention of strangers now willingly approached an autistic child. A few families, moving in social circles not always known for kindness, whispered that Lucy's parents should be careful. Strays can be dangerous, they warned, and what if Lucy can't handle it? But no one saw what Lucy saw when she looked into Harper's eyes. Each day she discovered how to share her quiet rhythms with an animal that also needed gentle acceptance. Their time in the barn turned into an informal routine. Lucy would come by after lunch, singing softly to herself, sometimes bringing scraps of leftover meat or bits of bread. Harper would greet her with those round, hopeful eyes, tail wagging in steady circles. This calm routine continued until one particularly windy afternoon, when Lucy finished her lunch and noticed a small commotion in the yard. A neighbor, out of breath, was talking to Thomas and Eleanor with a grave expression. Lucy's chest tightened. She hurried over, pressing her fingers together in her anxious habit. The neighbor was explaining how an old piece of farm equipment in Mr. Nelson's stable had broken, trapping him inside. A handful of people were scrambling to form a plan, but the stable's roof was on the verge of collapse. "We've called the rescue team," the neighbor said, "but they might not arrive fast enough." Lucy felt her heart race. She remembered Mr. Nelson's kindness, how he would tip his hat whenever they crossed paths, how he had once brought extra feed for the horses in the adjacent field. As fear twined through her mind, Lucy noticed Harper standing behind her. The dog's ears were upright, as if sensing the tension. Without fully understanding how, Lucy realized the dog might be able to help. Perhaps there was a reason Harper had remained on this farm. Perhaps, for the first time, Lucy's ability to sense unspoken needs could be the key to saving someone's life. She knelt beside Harper, looking him in the eye. Her voice trembled. "We have to help Mr. Nelson." Harper tilted his head, tail giving a gentle wag. Lucy turned to her parents, words tumbling out in a rush. "Harper can find him," she insisted. "He knows the fields. He knows the scents." Thomas hesitated, uncertain about sending a stray dog into a dangerous situation. But looking at Lucy's resolve, he realized there might be no other choice. The rescue team was delayed and time was running short. "All right," he agreed quietly. "We'll follow your lead." Lucy unlatched the gate, guiding Harper toward the far meadow where Mr. Nelson's stable stood. A strong gust nearly knocked her off balance, but the dog stood firm. Others followed at a safe distance, uncertain how this child and a rejected stray could possibly be of help. Yet Lucy trusted Harper's instincts, just as Harper trusted Lucy's gentle direction. As they neared the dilapidated stable, the sound of creaking wood and swirling debris filled the air. Dust stung Lucy's eyes, but she pressed on. "Mr. Nelson," she called, voice trembling. Through a gap in the collapsed beams, she heard a muffled cry. She turned to Harper. "Find him," she urged, stepping back to give the dog space. Harper sniffed the ground, then darted forward, maneuvering through the debris with an agility that left everyone speechless. If you've been captivated by this story so far, remember to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Share with us where you're watching from. Our tale has only begun, and the moments ahead will reveal just how extraordinary this bond can be. Harper slipped through the jagged opening without hesitation, his paws crunching on split planks that formed a precarious bridge over mounds of splintered wood. Lucy hovered a few feet behind, her stomach twisting as she watched. Every instinct told her to call him back, that the mess of fallen rafters and beams could hurt him. But she fought that urge. She saw determination in the dog's posture, an unspoken promise that he would find Mr. Nelson. A chill wind blew across her cheeks, carrying the acrid smell of dust and old straw. Thomas stood nearby, torn between trusting his daughter's intuition and stepping in to handle the crisis himself. But whenever he looked at Lucy, she seemed so certain that Harper could help, and something in her eyes encouraged him to hold back. Local neighbors, drawn by the commotion, gathered in nervous clusters, speaking in low voices about whether the old stable might give way at any second. An older woman clutched a shawl around her shoulders and shook her head. "It's madness to send a dog in there," she muttered. "He'll be trapped if the roof caves." Yet Lucy barely heard the whispered worries. She took a tentative step closer, peering into the shadowy interior. Shards of sunlight poked through the partially collapsed roof, illuminating swirling motes of dust. Somewhere in that haze, she glimpsed Harper's form weaving between overturned barrels. Wood creaked ominously. She swallowed, heart pounding. "Harper?" she called, voice cracking. "Careful." Inside, Mr. Nelson's breathing was ragged. His left leg had been pinned by a fallen beam, and blood matted the sleeve of his jacket. He fought to stay conscious, focusing on the small slice of daylight overhead. The sudden scuff of paws made him turn his head. When he saw Harper, disbelief flickered in his eyes. "You again," he whispered, recalling the stray he'd once tried to help. In that moment, relief rushed through him, because if the dog was there, maybe help was near. Harper inched closer, sniffing the air as though reading the environment. Debris cluttered every inch around Mr. Nelson, leaving only a narrow path. The man closed his eyes in exhaustion, certain he'd have to wait for firefighters. But Harper pressed his nose to Mr. Nelson's hand, gently enough that the old caretaker managed a hoarse chuckle of surprise. Outside, Lucy noticed the dog had not reappeared. Her chest tightened, remembering how many times she herself had felt trapped or stuck, moments when she longed for someone to notice her distress. Standing in the swirl of tense neighbors, she felt more alone than ever. All at once, she spun to face her parents, words tumbling out in an urgent whisper. "We can't wait. He might need me. I have to go in." Eleanor's eyes went wide. "Lucy, no, it's too dangerous." She placed a firm hand on her daughter's arm. "The rescue team will be here soon." But Lucy shook her head, her voice trembling with conviction. "Harper's in there, and Mr. Nelson can't move. I can help." When her mother tried to speak again, Lucy pulled away. The surge of determination that drove her forward was greater than her usual fears. She locked eyes with Thomas, silently pleading. Thomas exhaled, torn between paternal protectiveness and the spark of bravery he recognized in his daughter. "All right," he finally said, voice low, "but I'm coming in with you." They approached the gap in the stable's side, ignoring the gasps of onlookers who thought they were about to do something reckless. The moment Lucy ducked through the splintered boards, her heart hammered louder than ever. A swirl of dust stung her nostrils, and the musty smell of wet hay reminded her to keep her steps light. She could hear the scrape of beams overhead. Any sudden movement might cause more collapse. Thomas followed closely, shining a small flashlight into the gloom. "Harper," he whispered, "where are you, boy?" A faint whine answered from across the stable. Lucy felt for the dog's presence, letting her ears guide her. She sidestepped an overturned milk bucket and heard a rusted chain rattle. Then she saw them. Harper, standing protectively beside Mr. Nelson, who lay half-buried under a snapped rafter. "Oh no," Lucy breathed, inching closer. Mr. Nelson's face was pale, and the dried blood on his jacket gave Lucy a jolt of panic. She dropped to her knees, ignoring the dirt and splinters. "Mr. Nelson?" she said softly. "Can you hear me?" He nodded weakly, glancing from Lucy to Harper. "Didn't expect visitors," he mumbled, trying for a small smile. Thomas crouched down, assessing the beam that pinned Mr. Nelson's leg. "We have to move it carefully. If we jerk it, the roof might shift again." Lucy ran a shaky hand over Harper's flank, partly to calm the dog and partly to steady her own nerves. "It's all right," she whispered, though she wasn't sure whom she was reassuring. Then she spotted a possible exit route behind them, where a larger section of the wall had fallen inward. If they could manage to lift the beam enough for Mr. Nelson to slide free, maybe they could carry him out that way. Thomas tried to lift, but the heavy wood refused to budge. Lucy looked around frantically. "We need something to pry this up." In the corner, half hidden by straw, she spotted a long iron bar. "That might work," she exclaimed. Thomas hurried to retrieve it, stepping gingerly over twisted boards. Once the bar was wedged beneath the rafter, Thomas pressed down, veins bulging in his arms. Slowly, the beam lifted an inch. Lucy quickly helped Mr. Nelson maneuver his trapped leg. Harper watched, ears perked as though aware of how crucial each second was. The caretaker winced in pain. Lucy saw tension in her father's face. He couldn't hold the beam for long. Gritting her teeth, Lucy threw her weight onto the bar as well, her mind repeating a single urgent phrase: "Keep it steady. Keep it steady." Finally, Mr. Nelson managed to pull himself free. They lowered the rafter with a dull thud. A sudden crackling sound overhead made them all look up, hearts thudding. Pieces of wood groaned, threatening a final collapse. Thomas scooped Mr. Nelson's arm over his shoulders, while Lucy hovered, supporting them as best she could. "Let's move," Thomas urged. Harper trotted ahead, weaving around the debris as though guiding them. Lucy followed, heart in her throat, each step a risk. Dust rained down and beams shifted underfoot. When they finally reached the stable's rear opening, Lucy let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Neighbors rushed in to help, taking Mr. Nelson from Thomas's grasp. A few strong men formed a makeshift stretcher, using a piece of corrugated metal to carry him away from the unstable structure. The caretaker, still woozy but conscious, kept murmuring his thanks. The local ambulance had arrived, its lights flashing across the battered stable. Eleanor, who had waited anxiously outside, ran to Lucy the instant she emerged. She pulled her daughter into a fierce hug, tears shining in her eyes. "You're safe," she whispered. "I was so scared." Lucy nodded, her cheeks reddening with a swirl of emotions. Then she looked around for Harper. Her heart skipped when she didn't see him immediately. Moments later, she spotted him standing beside the ambulance, tail wagging gently as if checking on Mr. Nelson, who lay on the stretcher. Lucy approached, stroking Harper's ears with trembling fingers. "You did it," she whispered. "You found him." A paramedic kneeling beside Mr. Nelson overheard Lucy. He managed a tired smile. "Looks like you're a real hero, dog." He ruffled Harper's fur. The dog lowered his ears bashfully, as if uncertain how to accept the praise. In the aftermath, news spread quickly about the shy dog and the autistic girl who had guided him. The story became a small local sensation, with neighbors marveling at Harper's courage and Lucy's surprising resolve. Mr. Nelson, recovering in the hospital, told everyone who would listen how that unlikely duo had saved his life. "They might both be used to being overlooked," he remarked, "but I'll tell you, there's more strength in them than you'd believe." Back at Crestfield Meadows, Lucy felt a shift in her own heart. In school, she'd once been teased for the way she repeated phrases or for covering her ears when noises got too loud. Yet Harper never questioned those things. And now, with everyone praising the dog, Lucy sensed that people were finally seeing him through the same lens of acceptance she had used from the beginning. Thomas was the one who first raised the idea of adopting Harper, standing one evening in the kitchen with his arm draped around Eleanor. They watched Lucy in the yard, brushing Harper's coat and humming to him. "I think it's time," Thomas said, voice warm. "He belongs with us. You can see how they understand each other." Eleanor, fiddling with a mug of tea, gave a faint nod. "He's been rejected enough times," she said. "Why not give him a place where he'll never face that rejection again?" She paused, then added quietly, "And Lucy? She's blossoming around him. She's calmer, more open. I never dreamed we'd see her so engaged." That night, Lucy came inside for dinner, cheeks flushed from playing with Harper near the barn. Her parents asked her to sit. There was a softness in their eyes. She held her breath, bracing for the possibility they might say Harper had to stay outside or that they were too busy to handle a dog. But instead, Thomas cleared his throat. "How would you feel if Harper stayed with us for good?" Lucy froze, blinking rapidly. "You mean inside the house sometimes too?" Eleanor smiled. "Yes, in the house, part of the family." Lucy's reply stuck in her throat, but her eyes lit up and she nodded so fast her hair bobbed around her face. Words failed her, but tears filled the corners of her eyes. She bolted from her chair, rushing out the door to where Harper waited at his usual spot. If the dog had been able to understand the significance of that moment, Lucy made sure to convey it in her relieved embrace. In the following days, they arranged for a vet checkup. Harper took the visit bravely, though he shook a bit when the stethoscope touched his ribs. The vet confirmed that, aside from being slightly underweight, the dog was healthy. "He might have some old scars," the vet noted gently, "but nothing that proper care can't heal." Thomas completed the paperwork to finalize the adoption. Mr. Nelson, recovering swiftly, insisted on paying a portion of the fees, calling it a thank you to the dog that kept him alive. Lucy stood by the veterinarian's desk, arms fluttering in a nervous habit, but her eyes gleamed as she watched Thomas sign. She knew this was a turning point, not just for Harper, but for her as well. That night, Lucy and Harper roamed the upstairs hall of the newly furnished house, exploring corners that Lucy herself had barely ventured into. She showed him her bedroom walls, where she'd taped up sketches of swirling shapes that helped her feel calm. She showed him the reading nook, piled with stuffed animals. She even sat on the floor with him, building small towers of colored blocks. Harper watched attentively, tilting his head as she stacked the pieces higher and higher. In her own quiet way, Lucy believed that Harper was saving her too. If before she had difficulty sharing her world, now she had a companion who never judged or grew impatient. Where other people might have found her repetitive behaviors odd, Harper simply watched, as though her habits were part of what made her Lucy. If this chapter has kept your attention, remember to hit like and subscribe to our channel. Tell us where you're watching from, and brace yourself for the next part of this remarkable journey. Over the next few weeks, Lucy and Harper fell into a shared routine that seemed to bring them closer each day. Early in the morning, Lucy would wake and quietly open her bedroom door, where Harper would already be waiting with an eager thump of his tail. They would head downstairs for breakfast, Lucy nibbling toast, Harper munching on special kibble that the vet recommended. Afterward, while Thomas went off to handle errands and Eleanor tended to chores, Lucy would wander outside with Harper at her side. Whether they strolled around the perimeter of the yard or ventured to the old barn where the dog had once slept, their companionship was steady. Each small step Lucy took felt less lonely with Harper there, unwavering in his gentle vigilance each new day. While Lucy's calm expanded with Harper's presence, her parents also noticed changes in the dog himself. Once uncertain and skittish, Harper had grown confident inside the house. He would greet visitors with a tentative wag, no longer trembling when unfamiliar voices passed through the doorway. He seemed to understand Lucy's quiet cues, gravitating to her side whenever she sank into silent spells or became overwhelmed. On afternoons when the wind rattled the windows, Harper's steady companionship was enough to ground Lucy's scattered thoughts. Each moment together deepened their bond, reflecting a mutual acceptance they both craved. Eleanor sometimes found them curled up on Lucy's bedroom floor, Lucy reading softly from illustrated storybooks while Harper dozed, ears occasionally twitching as though he were listening too. At nightfall, they often rested intertwined. Schooling was the next hurdle. Lucy, who had been homeschooled for some time, was scheduled to begin classes at the local public school. Although the rural campus was smaller than her previous school, the anxiety in Lucy's chest flared whenever the conversation turned to meeting new classmates. Thomas and Eleanor gently proposed short visits to the building before the first official day. On a sunlit afternoon, they arranged for a brief tour, and Lucy walked the hallways clutching Harper's leash. The principal, a kind woman named Mrs. Randall, allowed Harper to accompany Lucy as a companion animal, pending final paperwork. Gazes followed them, some curious, some uncertain, yet Lucy's shoulders remained steadier with Harper's presence, an anchor in an unpredictable environment. This small assurance helped Lucy breathe easier that day. However, not everyone welcomed Harper's presence. A handful of parents expressed concern about having a dog roam the corridors, despite the principal's assurances. Rumors surfaced that a few children were afraid of large animals, and one vocal parent complained about allergies. Lucy noticed sideways glances whenever she tried to explain why Harper helped her stay calm. In a meeting arranged by Mrs. Randall, Thomas and Eleanor clarified the concept of a service-like companion. But skepticism lingered. Even Lucy's teacher, Ms. Collins, appeared hesitant, though she tried to be polite. Nevertheless, Lucy refused to attend school without Harper, and the principal stood by the arrangement. Despite the tension, Lucy clung to the knowledge that with Harper by her side, navigating each school day felt less daunting. She would never go alone. On Lucy's first official day of class, her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She kept a firm hold on Harper's leash as they approached the entrance, flanked by other children bustling inside. Her senses felt assaulted by the chaotic swirl of chatter, locker doors clanging and shoes squeaking on polished floors. Still, Harper's calm presence grounded her. The dog's head stayed level with her hip, stepping in tune with each cautious stride. A few students stopped to stare or point, but Lucy focused on her breathing, recalling the quiet meadows at home. Mrs. Collins greeted her at the classroom door with a polite smile, instructing Lucy to place Harper's mat near her desk. Although Lucy trembled slightly, she felt braver with Harper there. Everything else became bearable. The morning lessons weren't easy. Lucy had trouble focusing on the teacher's instructions, and her pencil tapped relentlessly against her notebook. Now and then she felt that crawling sensation beneath her skin, the one that warned of an oncoming meltdown. Each time, Harper would shift closer, resting his chin on her foot or nudging her gently, as if to say he was there. During breaks, Lucy avoided the busy hallways, preferring to stand near a window, listening to the murmur of voices behind her. A few classmates ventured timid smiles, curious about the girl with the dog. Lucy managed a slight nod in return. Though the day tested her tolerance, Lucy made it through every class without shutting down, grateful that Harper's quiet confidence never wavered. Each step felt triumphant. By dismissal, Lucy was exhausted, yet proud of surviving the new environment. Outside, Thomas waited in the car, ready to drive her home, and she sank into the back seat with a long sigh. Harper hopped up beside her, curling into a ball. Although Lucy rarely shared details of her day, her wide-eyed fatigue spoke volumes. Still, she managed to murmur, "It was okay," when Eleanor asked how she felt. In the following days, Lucy gradually found her footing, continuing to lean on Harper whenever the crowds or the noise became too much, and though a few parents still questioned the arrangement, it was evident the dog was no mere pet. For Lucy, Harper was an unwavering shield against a world that often felt too sharp. He softened every edge. At home, life flowed more easily. Harper slept on a plush bed beside Lucy's own, a silent guardian through the night. When Lucy had nightmares, she would reach down to touch Harper's fur, steadying herself in the darkness. On weekends, they walked the farm's boundary, Lucy humming tunes that kept her anxiety in check. Sometimes Mr. Nelson joined them, his leg healed enough to walk without crutches. He often recounted how it was Harper who braved the collapsing stable, always giving Lucy a grateful smile. Gradually, the neighbors who once regarded the dog with suspicion came to see him as a friendly figure. Word spread about the bond between Harper and Lucy, prompting kind souls to leave care packages of dog treats by the fence. Appreciation bloomed in every gesture. One evening, as autumn's chill began to settle, Lucy lingered outside after dinner. She stood near the fence, watching the stars brighten in the sky. Harper, ever watchful, patted over and nudged her hand. Lucy noticed his ears had pricked up, so she turned to see what caught his attention. At first, all was quiet except for a soft rustle of leaves. Then a faint whine drifted from the darkness beyond the fence. Harper's tail went still, and Lucy's heart thumped harder. Gathering courage, she switched on a small flashlight. Together they followed the sound, creeping across dewy grass until the beam revealed a tiny, shivering puppy wedged between rotting fence boards. Lucy drew a sharp breath, instantly recalling how Harper had once been alone. Compassion sparked within her chest. She crouched, extending a hand as Harper stood beside her. The puppy whimpered, glancing up with eyes wide in fright. Lucy's throat tightened. She remembered her own terror whenever placed in unfamiliar situations. Gently, she reached forward, and the puppy sniffed her fingers. Harper let out a soft huff, almost like reassurance. With care, Lucy coaxed the trembling creature out from the gap. It appeared underweight, ribs faintly visible under sparse fur. She pressed it against her coat, feeling its heartbeat flutter. A swirl of memories rushed in, of how others had dismissed Harper, how she herself had been excluded. Carrying the puppy in trembling arms, Lucy stepped back toward the house. That night, Crestfield Meadows witnessed another unexpected act of kindness, one sparked by a girl who understood rejection intimately. That night, Lucy carried the trembling puppy into the warm glow of the kitchen, heart drumming with concern. Outside, the sky draped over Crestfield Meadows like a moonlit tapestry, but Lucy's focus stayed on the small bundle of fur in her arms. The puppy's ribs showed faintly through its patchy coat, and a soft whine escaped whenever Lucy shifted him. Immediately, Eleanor and Thomas exchanged concerned looks from where they stood by the sink. They had just finished washing dishes when Lucy rushed in, Harper trailing close behind. "Where did you find him?" Eleanor asked, ushering Lucy to set the puppy on a clean towel spread across the table. Lucy explained in halting words how she heard a whine, then spotted the puppy trapped by the rotting fence. As she spoke, her fingers twisted nervously around each other, and her gaze flicked from her parents' faces to Harper, who waited on the kitchen's threshold, ears lowered in empathy. Thomas gently examined the puppy for injuries, frowning at the pup's ragged condition. "Looks like he's been malnourished," he murmured. "No collar either." The tiny creature blinked, letting out a yelp when Thomas touched its hind leg. Lucy's stomach sank. She recalled the fear she once saw in Harper's eyes. Would this puppy also bear scars of neglect? Harper approached quietly, sniffing the pup's head. A careful moment passed, and then, as though recognizing a soul in need, Harper gave a short, reassuring nudge. Lucy exhaled a shaky breath, relieved that Harper's gentle acceptance might help calm the newcomer. Eleanor grabbed a shallow dish, filling it with warm water. "We'll clean him up a bit, see if he can keep some food down." She spoke gently, her maternal instinct kicking in. Lucy hovered, anxious to help but uncertain how to proceed. She remembered how crucial gentle movements had been when Harper first warmed up to them. They decided to name the little dog Sprout, after Lucy observed how he clung to life like a fragile seedling. Despite initial wariness, Sprout allowed Lucy to pour warm water over his legs and dab away the grime clinging to his fur. Any abrupt motions made him flinch, so Lucy slowed her hands until her touch felt like a soft breeze. She could sense the pup's breathing ease, though his eyes remained haunted. Harper, looming a step away, offered moral support through calm watchfulness. Once Sprout was clean and snuggled in an old blanket, Lucy sat beside the table, knees drawn up. She hummed one of her quiet, repetitive tunes, low vibrations that had long soothed her when words didn't suffice. With each phrase of her melody, Sprout's trembling lessened. It reminded Lucy of how, during her hardest days, steady sounds or touches could keep her balanced. She gave Harper a grateful pat, appreciating how he too had helped her through anxious nights. By the time Thomas managed to reach the local vet for an emergency phone consultation, Sprout had relaxed enough to lap a little water. The vet said to keep him warm, watch for dehydration, and schedule an in-person appointment the next day. Lucy volunteered immediately to hold vigil, though her parents insisted on rearranging a small sleeping area in the laundry room just to ensure Sprout stayed in a contained space. "He'll be safe here," Eleanor assured, "and we'll be nearby." Nighttime found Lucy struggling to rest in her own bed. She tossed, picturing Sprout's fragile form behind the laundry room door. How lonely he must feel. When the house finally fell quiet, she tiptoed downstairs. Harper followed, nails clicking on the wooden steps. Lucy leaned against the laundry room's narrow doorway and peered in. Under a soft lamp, Sprout lay curled on the towel bed, eyes half open. At first, Lucy hesitated to disturb him, but the pup noticed her presence and wagged his tail, just once, faint as a whisper. It was invitation enough. Lucy lowered herself onto the floor, letting Harper nudge past to settle near Sprout's pillow. She observed how the older dog brushed his muzzle against the puppy's ear, a gesture that seemed to say, "You're not alone." Lucy felt her own chest tighten, with an odd mix of compassion and memory, because she knew that sense of isolation all too well. She sat cross-legged until her body began to ache, determined to remain vigilant for as long as Sprout needed comfort. The next morning, they took Sprout to see the vet. In the waiting room, Lucy pressed her back to the wall, the bustle of other pet owners overwhelming her. But Harper, resting near her feet, gave her silent courage. When Sprout was called, Eleanor led him gently into the exam room while Lucy stood by, biting her lip. Dr. Montoya, the veterinarian, examined the pup and shook her head softly. "He's thin and was likely out there on his own for several days, but no severe injuries. With proper nutrition and a safe environment, he should recover." A wave of relief passed through Lucy and her parents. They left with a small bag of specialized puppy food and a schedule for future checkups. Back home, Lucy sensed a familiar shift in the atmosphere. Not long ago, she had feared that adopting Harper might be too big of a leap for her family, but now they were adding another vulnerable creature to the household. Despite that, Thomas and Eleanor radiated cautious optimism. "We'll foster Sprout until he's strong," Thomas declared. "Then we'll see if someone wants to adopt." Lucy nodded, though an ache tugged her heart. She knew the plan made sense. 2 dogs could be demanding, and who could guarantee that Sprout would be comfortable in a busy environment? Still, she couldn't help wishing the pup would stay. She tried telling herself that he might prefer a quieter life with another family, but the thought of letting him go stung. That evening, Lucy perched by the window, watching Sprout explore the fenced yard under Harper's watchful gaze. Each day, the puppy revealed a bit more playfulness, chasing leaves or stumbling in circles. Lucy smiled whenever she saw Sprout attempt to mimic Harper's calm presence, as though learning confidence from an older sibling. She replayed in her mind how their own connection to Harper had started with caution, but grown into an unbreakable bond. A tiny voice inside her whispered that Sprout too could belong here if they truly opened their hearts. School, meanwhile, continued to pose challenges for Lucy. With Harper by her side, she managed to keep meltdowns at bay. Even so, the weight of other students' stares and the unpredictability of group projects tested her nerves. One Monday afternoon, Ms. Collins announced a group assignment on local geography. Lucy's palms instantly felt clammy because group work meant socializing with classmates who often didn't know how to talk to her. Still, Harper curled at her feet, quiet and steady, as though reminding her that she wasn't alone. 3 other students joined Lucy's group: Mari, a studious girl with wire-rimmed glasses; Chris, a boy who loved to crack jokes; and Jared, whose tall frame and aloof manner intimidated Lucy. The teacher gave them a map and told them to identify farm areas in the county. Straight away, Jared asked, "So do we have to, talk slower for you or something?" Lucy recoiled at the blunt remark. Before Mari could scold him, Lucy felt a nudge at her ankle. Harper lifted his head, gazing at her with that unwavering reassurance. Lucy swallowed her urge to flee and answered, voice hardly above a whisper, "No, I just need time to think." Chris tried to diffuse the tension by pointing at the map, asking about farmland boundaries, and the conversation shifted. Even so, Lucy's hands trembled slightly while she traced lines with a pencil. At one point, Jared rolled his eyes as if impatient with her slower pace. But Lucy kept her composure, partly because Harper's presence acted like a shield. By the end of the period, they had finished labeling half the map, and Lucy felt relief that no meltdown had occurred. That day, when she arrived home, Lucy sank onto the living room rug. She closed her eyes, feeling tears of sheer fatigue press against her lids. Then something warm and soft nuzzled her cheek. Harper on one side, Sprout on the other. She pulled them both close, letting the day's tension slip away in the swirl of dog fur and unconditional warmth. She heard her parents enter quietly, but they seemed to sense that Lucy needed space, so they set down groceries and retreated with gentle smiles. Later, as night stretched across the meadow, Lucy joined Thomas outside to gather tools from the barn. Moonlight bathed the property in silver. That's when he brought up the question that had been on Lucy's mind since they found Sprout. "There's a family in the next county looking for a puppy," Thomas said carefully, placing a hammer on the workbench. "Mr. Nelson told them about Sprout. They'd come to meet him tomorrow if we agree." Lucy gripped the edge of the workbench, trying to keep her voice steady. "Oh." Her eyes dropped to the floor. She wanted to say that Sprout belonged here, but the words lodged in her throat. Thomas hesitated. "You know, fostering was always our plan. Still, I wonder if this place might be what he needs. You've grown attached, haven't you?" Lucy nodded, tears threatening to gather. She thought about how Sprout's quickening tail welcomed her home from school, how he followed Harper's lead, and how their presence made her feel less alone. The idea of losing that closeness felt unbearable. Thomas sighed, stepping closer. "I just want you to be sure. Caring for 2 dogs is more responsibility. If you're certain, I'll support you. But you have to say it. This is your voice." Lucy swallowed, then lifted her face. In the cool hush of the barn, with the crickets singing, she found her courage. "Dad, I want him to stay." With those words, Lucy felt relief surge through her, like an exhale she had been holding all week. Thomas pulled her into a side hug, warmth radiating from his quiet acceptance. "Then we'll let the other family know," he murmured. "We'll do our best to give Sprout the home he deserves. We'll be a family of 4 humans and 2 dogs, I guess." As Lucy and Thomas returned to the house, the dogs bounded up to greet them, tails wagging in unison. Lucy knelt, ruffling Sprout's ears. "You're staying," she whispered, a tremor of joy in her voice. Harper seemed to understand, nose nudging Sprout with a gentle nuzzle. To Lucy, that moment felt like a promise that from now on neither dog would face rejection again. If this story has touched you so far, remember to like and subscribe. We'd love to know from which city you're watching. Stay with us, because there's still much more to come in Lucy, Harper, and Sprout's journey. One crisp Saturday morning, Lucy woke to find Sprout balanced on Harper's broad back, as if trying to mimic the older dog's confidence. The little pup had grown bolder in just a week, bounding around the house with uncontainable energy. Despite the occasional mishap, like chewing on a misplaced sock, Sprout's playful spirit painted the entire household with bright anticipation. Lucy watched him dart between table legs, chasing invisible dust motes, while Harper oversaw these antics with a tolerant expression. It struck Lucy as a miniature version of her own journey, once timid, overshadowed by a world that felt too big, and now gradually finding her own voice. She sat on the floor by the living room window, letting Sprout dash around her ankles, all the while humming a gentle tune that kept her grounded in the swirl of excitement. Eleanor and Thomas soon joined Lucy in the living room, mugs of tea warming their hands. They smiled at how fully the dogs had integrated into their home. "We've arranged another visit for next week," Eleanor reminded Lucy in a gentle tone. "A potential therapy specialist is coming to evaluate how Harper and Sprout might help you and other children with similar needs." Lucy's eyes lit up, though she felt a flutter of nerves. She had long since realized Harper's calming influence, but she never imagined he could be part of an official program. The idea that a professional recognized their bond gave Lucy a tentative surge of confidence. Maybe, just maybe, they could help others who struggled as she once did. She whispered a quiet thank you, letting Sprout climb into her lap for an impromptu cuddle, his tail wagging so fast it blurred. That afternoon, Lucy decided to practice speaking aloud in front of a mirror. Public speaking was a new hurdle. Ms. Collins had assigned a small presentation about each student's personal interest, and Lucy planned to talk about animals, especially the healing effect of dogs. Though dread coiled within her whenever she pictured standing at the blackboard, Lucy was determined. She closed her bedroom door, faced the mirror, and lifted a note card with carefully scribbled bullet points. Harper and Sprout perched nearby, heads cocked as though they too were her audience. Lucy tried out the words, feeling her voice catch. She paused, took a slow breath, and began again. Bit by bit, the phrases flowed more smoothly, and each time she glanced at Harper's calm stare or Sprout's wagging tail, she found enough courage to keep going. By the end, the mirror Lucy managed a small grin of relief. At school, Lucy's status as the girl with the dogs had turned into an oddly protective halo. While some classmates still cast sidelong glances, others tentatively asked about Harper, or even about Sprout, after Lucy shared how she had rescued him. Mari, the quiet girl from Lucy's group project, started saving a seat for Lucy in the cafeteria. Though Lucy didn't speak much, her presence alone seemed enough to form a tentative friendship. Chris occasionally joined them, telling silly jokes that coaxed a smile from Lucy's lips. Still, Jared remained distant, often rolling his eyes whenever Lucy or the subject of her dogs came up. She tried not to let his dismissiveness rattle her, reminding herself that not everyone understood. Meanwhile, Ms. Collins cautiously warmed to Harper in the classroom, seeing how the dog's presence diffused Lucy's anxiety. The teacher noted Lucy's progress, quietly impressed. All the while, Sprout's puppy curiosity led him into regular mischief. One day after school, Lucy found the pup nibbling the corner of a math textbook she had left on the couch. Another time, he chased a butterfly into the garden and tumbled straight into an herb planter, flattening Eleanor's basil. Through these minor mishaps, Lucy learned to manage frustration, employing gentle redirection instead of anger. She grasped that Sprout needed the same patience she once craved from teachers and peers. Each time, Harper played a moderating role, nudging Sprout away from trouble or corralling him back toward Lucy. Thomas called them the unstoppable duo, a pair who turned the mundane into an adventure of learning and acceptance. As the day of Lucy's classroom presentation approached, her nerves spiked. She wrote multiple drafts of her talk, scribbling notes in shaky handwriting. She even rehearsed for her parents one evening, her voice quivering until Harper pressed his nose against her knee, reminding her to slow her breathing. "You'll do great, honey," Eleanor said, offering Lucy a proud smile. "Just remember why this matters to you." Lucy nodded, repeating that phrase in her head like a mantra. She wanted her classmates to grasp the idea that dogs weren't just pets. They could be lifelines for people struggling with sensory overload, anxiety, or loneliness. She wanted them to understand how a creature once abandoned could now stand for hope in her life. Finally, the presentation day arrived. Lucy wore a neat sweater, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail to keep it out of her face. She walked into Ms. Collins's room, Harper pacing steadily beside her, and found the class arranged in rows of desks. Lucy's stomach tightened. In the front row, Jared sat with his arms folded, expression unreadable. Farther back, Mari offered a small wave of encouragement. Lucy inhaled slowly, letting Harper's presence calm her racing thoughts. When Ms. Collins introduced her, Lucy stepped forward, note cards trembling in her hand. She glanced once at Harper, whose brown eyes seemed to say, "I'm here." Then she began, "My name is Lucy. and I want to talk about how dogs can help people, like me, feel safe. The first sentences came out timid, barely audible. Lucy paused, adjusting her posture. She remembered practicing in front of the mirror the times she'd repeated these words until they felt embedded in her bones. She tried again, louder this time. She described how she once struggled to manage big noises, how she felt out of place in big crowds, and how having Harper by her side let her navigate the world without panic. She explained Sprout's rescue, how he mirrored her own experience of needing someone to believe in him. Some classmates listened in rapt attention, while others cast glances at the clock or their phones. Still, Lucy pressed on. She showed photos of Harper wearing a small vest indicating he was her service dog. She even displayed pictures of Sprout's first night in the house, looking scared yet hopeful. A hush overtook the room as Lucy finished with a simple appeal. I want you to know that compassion doesn't just help the one who's hurting. It helps us all. Applause broke out, scattered at first, then swelling. Mari clapped the hardest, beaming at Lucy. Chris gave her a thumbs up, his typical grin replaced by something closer to admiration. Ms. Collins thanked Lucy for her honesty, her voice tinged with genuine respect. Even Jared, though he didn't join the applause as vigorously, seemed less scornful. Lucy felt warmth flood through her limbs. She had confronted one of her biggest fears, speaking to a group, and emerged intact. On her way back to her desk, Harper followed at her heel, tail wagging gently. The leftover tension in Lucy's chest melted at the sight of Ms. Collins' approving nod. When school let out that day, Lucy practically floated through the corridor. In the car, Thomas noticed how alive her expression was. He teased lightly, "You look like you just had the best day of your life." Lucy blushed, hugging Harper around the neck. "I'm just happy," she admitted. Back at Crestfield Meadows, she raced inside to share the news with Eleanor, who enveloped her in a tight hug. "I'm proud of you," Eleanor whispered. "Every day, you show us how strong you are." That evening, Lucy's peaceful glow faltered when she heard a fierce bark outside. She dashed to the living room window to see Sprout chasing something near the fence. Racing outside, she found the puppy barking indignantly at a large stray dog, ragged and scrawny, fur caked with mud. Instinctively, Lucy felt worry. This newcomer carried an air of unpredictability, glaring back with suspicious eyes. Eleanor, alarmed by Sprout's frantic yips, approached quickly. "Careful, Lucy," she warned. "We don't know that dog." Lucy nodded, recalling her own caution from the day she met Harper. She slowly withdrew Sprout from the fence, stroking his ears to calm him. The stray dog lingered a moment, watching them with a guarded stare before slipping away into the darkness. Lucy's heart pounded. She recognized that wariness, an animal ready to fight or flee, lacking the trust that might allow it to accept human kindness. As she knelt, hugging a trembling Sprout, Lucy wondered if she would see that dog again. A wave of empathy coursed through her, thinking of how close Harper once came to being chased off or ignored forever. She didn't want that fate for another lost soul. Yet with Sprout still so young and Harper devoted to Lucy's own needs, it would be a delicate balance to bring another wounded creature into their circle. She stared at the fence line long after the dog had vanished, mind racing with possibilities. Perhaps the stray would never return, or perhaps he would come seeking the same acceptance Harper had once needed, and Lucy knew she was too soft-hearted to turn away. If this chapter has pulled you in, please remember to like and subscribe. Let us know from which city you're watching, and stay tuned. Lucy's world continues to expand, and there may be more surprises at Crestfield Meadows. That night, Lucy had trouble sleeping. She lay awake, gazing at the shifting shapes in the moonlit shadows cast across her ceiling, replaying the stray dog's wary eyes in her mind. Sprout, curled on a cushion beside Harper's larger bed, let out a soft sigh as though sensing Lucy's restlessness. The day's events, the triumphant presentation at school, the sudden appearance of the unfriendly stray, kept spinning in her thoughts. At times she felt the old anxiety creeping in, the same swirl of unspoken fears that used to paralyze her before Harper came into her life. Yet every time the doubt rose, she reminded herself of how far she'd come, from covering her ears and hiding from the world to addressing a whole classroom without fleeing in panic. She had proven she could grow, just like Sprout had blossomed under care. That gave her a glimmer of hope for the mysterious dog that roamed outside, alone and mistrustful. Morning came slowly, bringing a golden wash of sunlight over the farm's fences and fields. Lucy awoke to find Sprout tugging on her blanket, eager for breakfast. She gently shushed him and padded downstairs, careful not to wake her parents. Harper descended more gracefully, stepping in measured strides beside Lucy. Once in the kitchen, Lucy scooped kibble into bowls while the dogs waited patiently. She smiled at their unspoken gratitude. The memory of last night's stray lingered like a small ache, but she tried to focus on the warmth of routine. Eleanor appeared moments later, tying her robe. She gave Lucy a quick hug. "I heard you stirring. Everything all right?" Lucy nodded, though she struggled to articulate her unease about the stray. She was never good at describing complex emotions on the spot. Instead, she murmured something about hoping the stray had found shelter before daybreak. Eleanor nodded, pouring herself a cup of tea. "You have a tender heart, Lucy. Don't let that worry consume you. We can see if that dog shows up again." Lucy thought about that promise throughout the day. After finishing her weekend chores, she wandered outside with Harper and Sprout, scanning the horizon for any sign of the newcomer. The open fields shone under the sun, a patchwork of grain, grasses, and pockets of trees. She circled near the fence where the encounter had taken place. There, she discovered a scattering of paw prints in the soft earth. Her heart skipped. The tracks looked fresh, but the dog itself was nowhere in sight. That afternoon, Mr. Nelson stopped by to drop off extra horse feed. Lucy mustered the courage to ask if he'd heard about another stray in the area. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "I did notice a dog rummaging near my barn a week back. Didn't catch more than a glimpse, scruffy, thin, kept its distance. I left some scraps out, but it never stayed." Lucy felt a pang of sympathy. She remembered how even Harper used to shy away from human contact, as though expecting rejection. Perhaps this stray shared that same wariness. She thanked Mr. Nelson, who tipped his hat politely, adding, "If you see him again, be careful. Some strays carry bad experiences that make them unpredictable." As evening fell, Lucy found herself at the window once more, gazing toward the fence. Instead of fear, she felt determination. If that stray returned, maybe she could offer the smallest kindness: food, water, or just a gentle approach. She tried to recall her own terrors when confronted by busy hallways or strangers. If empathy helped her overcome those burdens, maybe it could reach a dog afraid of everything beyond survival. She placed a bowl of leftover stew near the fence line at dusk, hoping the aroma might lure the dog out from hiding. Then she retreated, watching from a distance. But as the moon rose, no shadow emerged to claim the meal. Only the wind rustled the grass. In the days that followed, Lucy's focus turned toward the therapy specialist's visit. Dr. Alvarez, who worked at a nearby center for children with diverse needs, was intrigued by the story of Lucy and Harper. The possibility that Sprout might also bring comfort to other kids sparked new excitement. Dr. Alvarez arrived on a Tuesday morning, greeted with warm hospitality from Thomas and Eleanor. Lucy stood by, quietly observing, while Harper and Sprout nosed the visitor's shoes in cautious welcome. Dr. Alvarez was a tall woman with a soothing voice, wearing an ID badge on a lanyard that Sprout tried to nibble. "Let's see how you interact with them, Lucy. Dr. Alvarez invited, motioning toward the living room. Lucy settled on the couch and the dogs followed. She described how Harper's presence helped her calm down, how patting his fur slowed her racing heart. She explained that Sprout, though younger, often mirrored Harper's signals, effectively forming a comforting pair. Dr. Alvarez nodded, asking thoughtful questions. Did Lucy find verbal or physical cues more soothing? Was she comfortable with letting the dogs approach other children? Lucy answered as best she could, halting when words didn't come easily, but Dr. Alvarez showed patience. Throughout it all, Harper lay at Lucy's feet, his ears flicking whenever Dr. Alvarez's tone changed, as if he were listening too. The session lasted well into midday. By the end, Dr. Alvarez appeared impressed. "There's a special bond here," she said, jotting notes. "Harper is remarkably attuned to your emotional state, Lucy, and Sprout, though still learning, seems naturally empathetic. We can do a trial program, perhaps inviting a small group of children to see how they respond." Lucy's heart skipped with both excitement and nerves. The idea of letting strangers into her safe bubble was intimidating, but the thought that Harper's compassion might help others made it feel worthwhile. When Dr. Alvarez left, Lucy gazed at Harper, a swirl of gratitude in her chest. She remembered how once upon a time, he too had been cast aside. Now, here he was, recognized for a gift that came from simple, unwavering kindness. She knelt, wrapping her arms gently around his neck, her breath catching with emotion. Harper licked her cheek, a quiet affirmation that he was ready for whatever lay ahead. Later that afternoon, Lucy found a moment to herself by the fence. She was placing another food bowl out of habit, though each day it remained untouched. A flicker of motion on the far side caught her eye. She held her breath, scanning the tall grass. Sure enough, the ragged stray peered back at her, half hidden by an overgrown patch of weeds. Lucy stayed very still, offering no sudden movement. Her mind raced, recalling each step she'd taken to gain Harper's trust, how fear once kept him distant until patience melted his defenses. This was the same path. Slowly, Lucy lowered into a squat, a small, steady exhale escaping her lips. She didn't speak or wave. She just allowed her posture to soften. The stray eyed her warily, glancing at the fresh food. Lucy dared not move closer. Minutes crawled by, the hush broken only by a crow's distant caw. Finally, the dog crept forward, each step cautious. Lucy's heart pounded, but she remained motionless. Its fur looked even dirtier up close, patches missing around one ear, scar lines visible across its muzzle. The dog hovered above the bowl, nostrils flaring at the scent of cooked leftovers. Lucy half expected it to bolt the moment she twitched. Instead, it leaned down and devoured the food in a flurry of frantic gulps. Lucy felt tears pricking her eyes, a mixture of relief and heartbreak. She longed to reach out, but knew it was too soon. Lucy trembled with hope, quietly bracing for tomorrow. Lucy awoke the next morning with the memory of the ragged stray still fresh in her mind. She dressed quickly, tiptoed downstairs, and slipped outside with a small bowl of leftover chicken. Early sunlight cast long shadows across Crestfield meadows, highlighting the dew on every blade of grass. She walked to the fence, heart drumming as she recalled how the dog had devoured her offering the previous afternoon. Carefully, she set the bowl down in the same spot. Then she took several steps back, crouching near a cluster of wildflowers to wait. Her breath caught each time the breeze stirred, hoping to see that familiar outline emerge from the distant brush. Time passed slowly. The sky brightened, turning a pale shade of blue as day took hold. Lucy sensed Harper and Sprout behind her. They had followed but kept a respectful distance. Neither barked nor ventured too close to the fence. Whether by instinct or training, they seemed to understand Lucy's intention to let the frightened newcomer approach on his own. At last, after Lucy had nearly resigned herself to standing up and returning home, a ripple in the grass caught her eye. The stray's muzzle appeared between the stems, nostrils flaring in search of the food's aroma. Lucy froze, careful not to move even a finger. The dog advanced, step by wary step. He was larger than Harper, lankier, with visible ribs and a dull coat bearing scars. Once he reached the bowl, he gobbled down the chicken, but his eyes never left Lucy's silhouette. She remained still, letting him sense she meant no harm. To her surprise, after finishing the meal, the stray didn't bolt. Instead, he lifted his head, sniffing the air around Lucy, as if trying to decide whether she posed a threat. The world seemed suspended for those few seconds. She dared not speak or reach out. Then, as if a sudden shift in the wind startled him, the dog retreated, disappearing as quickly as he'd come. Lucy exhaled, feeling both relieved and a little sad. She'd held a distant hope that the dog might let her approach, but the truth was simpler. Trust rarely formed in a single day. She reminded herself that she'd needed time to trust new classmates or teachers, and Harper had spent weeks inching closer to her in the early days. This was just the beginning. With a gentle pat on Harper's head, she picked up the empty bowl and returned to the house, determined to keep trying. Over the following days, Lucy persisted in placing food near the fence, each time retreating to a safe distance. Sometimes the stray appeared at midday, other times at dusk. Occasionally, Lucy glimpsed him near the barn's far edge, scrounging for scraps. She realized he must be wandering a wide territory, uncertain if humans could be counted on. From inside the living room, Eleanor watched her daughter's efforts, heart swelling with pride, yet also concern. Caring for Harper and Sprout was already a handful, and Lucy's own emotional needs ran deep. But seeing Lucy's resolve, Eleanor couldn't help but feel she was witnessing another quiet miracle unfold, one that mirrored the compassion Lucy herself had learned to receive. Meanwhile, Dr. Alvarez contacted Thomas with promising news. A small group of children from the therapy center had shown interest in visiting Crestfield Meadows. Their conditions varied. Some were on the autism spectrum like Lucy, others dealt with anxiety or trauma. Dr. Alvarez believed that spending time with Harper and Sprout could be a gentle introduction to animals' therapeutic power. Thomas and Eleanor agreed eagerly, recalling how Lucy had once been closed off until Harper unlocked a part of her spirit. That same gift might uplift other children who felt misunderstood or overwhelmed. Preparations for the visit brought an odd mix of excitement and tension. Lucy, though she desperately wanted to share Harper's calming presence, grew nervous about multiple unfamiliar kids stepping onto the property. Large groups could overstimulate her, and she worried about how Harper and Sprout would respond. Thomas reassured her that Dr. Alvarez planned a slow, structured introduction. They set up a shaded area under a tall oak, placing folding chairs in a wide circle so no one would feel cramped. A few sensory-friendly toys and soft blankets lay nearby in case any child, or even Lucy herself, needed a quiet corner to retreat to. Harper and Sprout were brushed and groomed, their coats gleaming with health. When the big day arrived, a van pulled up carrying Dr. Alvarez and 4 children of varying ages. From her vantage point near the barn, Lucy clutched her hands together, tension coiling in her belly. Harper stood at her side, occasionally pressing his nose against Lucy's palm. "It's okay," she whispered, borrowing the same phrase she'd once offered him when he was just a frightened stray. Sprout bounded in circles, excited by new scents, but Harper's calm presence steadied them both. Dr. Alvarez introduced each child with a gentle tone. Jacob, a boy of about 9, clung to her arm, eyes downcast. Emily, slightly older, wore bright pink headphones to muffle sounds. Sophia and Marcus, both teenagers, lingered in the back, uncertain whether to move forward. Lucy felt a sudden rush of empathy, recalling her own first days at the new school. Through careful gestures, Dr. Alvarez ushered them to the circle of chairs beneath the oak, Once everyone settled, Lucy guided Harper forward. Sprout, feeling a bit bold, scampered ahead, but Lucy reined him in gently, not wanting him to overwhelm anyone. Dr. Alvarez asked if Lucy wanted to talk about Harper, but Lucy hesitated, feeling the eyes of strangers. Her throat tightened. Then she remembered the speech she had delivered in class. Summoning courage, Lucy explained in a halting voice how Harper had once been a stray, just like many kids might feel lost in a world that doesn't understand them. She spoke of how he helped her cope with loud noises or unexpected changes. A hush settled on the group. Even those who had seemed restless paid attention. Harper calmly approached Jacob, the boy who clutched Dr. Alvarez's arm. His posture was non-threatening. Lucy noticed the subtle tilt of Harper's ears and the slow wag of his tail. It was as if he'd tuned into Jacob's nervous energy. The boy glanced at Harper, eyes curious but hesitant. Dr. Alvarez knelt, whispered reassuring words, and soon, Jacob inched forward enough to let Harper sniff his hand. Lucy's heart swelled at the sight. Child and dog, forging a delicate bridge over fear. Sprout, meanwhile, padded toward Sophia and Marcus. The teens exchanged uneasy looks, but Sprout's wiggly excitement elicited faint smiles. Lucy hovered nearby, ready to intervene if the pup got too pushy. However, Sprout's charm worked wonders. Marcus tentatively reached out, brushing his fingertips across Sprout's head. A wave of relief flooded Lucy. She could see that in small increments, each child found a piece of wonder in connecting with these dogs. Even Emily, wearing her pink headphones, giggled softly when Harper trotted by, his tail wagging in a show of gentle greeting. As the visit unfolded, Lucy watched Dr. Alvarez guide the children in small activities, petting the dogs, feeding them small treats from open palms. The presence of the animals seemed to lower the invisible barriers that so often kept these kids trapped in their own anxious worlds. Lucy recognized the transformation in their eyes, the way curiosity gradually replaced apprehension. It mirrored her own evolution with Harper. Later, as the sun dipped lower and the soft breeze carried the sweet scent of hay, Dr. Alvarez gathered everyone around for a quiet reflection. Lucy joined them, feeling an unaccustomed sense of belonging. At school, she often hovered at the edges, uncertain how to connect. Here, in the company of dogs and kids who shared similar struggles, she felt no pressure to fit a predefined mold. Harper's muzzle rested on her leg, Sprout curled at her feet, and for once, Lucy did not shy away from the group's collective gaze. As the session ended, the children climbed back into the van with lingering smiles and whispered goodbyes to the dogs. Dr. Alvarez thanked Lucy's family profusely. "This was a beautiful experience," she said, gently squeezing Lucy's hand. "You and Harper, and little Sprout too, might just have a gift for helping others feel seen." Lucy lowered her gaze shyly, but inside she felt a glow. Her parents beamed with pride. No sooner had the van disappeared down the gravel driveway than Lucy remembered the stray. The day's joy reminded her that every anxious heart deserved a chance. Without hesitation, she dashed to the fence line, carrying fresh leftovers. She found fresh paw prints in the dirt, but the dog wasn't there. Perhaps he had come earlier, discovering no meal, and left again. Resolute, Lucy left the bowl in its usual spot, then took a few steps back to wait. Harper and Sprout stood sentinel, ears pricked at the golden horizon. Minutes passed with no movement. Lucy sighed, musing that trust might take far longer for this dog. Yet she couldn't abandon him, not after glimpsing the hidden pain in his posture. Deciding to give him space, she turned toward the house. Just then, Sprout let out a curious yip, and Lucy spun around. The stray stepped from the brush. This time Lucy spotted him more clearly in the evening light. Dusty fur, haunted eyes, a scar along his flank. Her heart lurched. He padded to the bowl, gulped down the food, then flicked his gaze at Lucy. She stayed perfectly still, breath caught in her throat. Harper didn't bark or lunge. Instead, he watched quietly. as if remembering that day he stood alone and Lucy simply let him exist in peace. For a flicker of a moment, the stray seemed to contemplate stepping closer. Lucy willed her own body to remain relaxed, arms at her sides, face gentle. But just as quickly, a faint noise, a truck rolling along the distant road, spooked him. In a flash, he dashed away, disappearing into the lengthening shadows. Lucy's shoulders sagged, though not entirely in disappointment. Even that brief hesitation felt like progress. She realized the stray might be closer than ever to letting her approach, if she continued showing him patience. As she and the dogs returned home, the last rays of sun bathed the fields in gold, and Lucy found herself smiling at the thought. She'd discovered how one simple act of compassion could ripple outward, changing countless lives. Perhaps in time it would change this stray's life as well. Lucy spent the rest of that evening quietly replaying the stray's fleeting moment of hesitation. It fueled her determination to keep trying, though her mind also flickered with worry. She knew not every animal's story ended as happily as Harper's or Sprout's, yet the possibility of reaching that isolated dog gave her a gentle spark of hope. That night, she fell asleep with Harper curled at her side and Sprout nestled at her feet, comforted by the idea that compassion, however hesitant, could cross barriers if she stayed patient. The next morning started with a swirl of activity. Thomas and Eleanor had promised to deliver a crate of fresh produce to the local farmer's market, leaving Lucy at home to catch up on homework. She sat at the dining table, pencil tapping rhythmically against an open notebook. Algebra problems sprawled across the page, but her attention kept drifting to the fence line outside. Every so often, she'd glance at the window, wondering if the stray might appear sooner than dusk. She considered setting out a bowl of rice and chicken again, but without her parents around, she felt uneasy venturing near the fence alone. The dog, after all, remained unpredictable. By midday, Lucy needed a break. Homework had become a tangle of numbers that blurred in her mind. She rose and signaled Harper and Sprout with a gentle pat on her thigh. Both dogs jumped up, instantly sensing a shared excursion. "Come on," she said quietly. "Let's go to the barn." The air was crisp with a faint autumnal chill, leaves showing the first hints of gold. Inside the barn, dust motes danced in slanted sunbeams, and Lucy took a moment to breathe in the familiar scent of hay and old wood. Sprout pranced around, sniffing at corners as though searching for hidden treasures. Harper, more sedate, settled near Lucy's feet. A memory floated back. The first time Lucy had discovered Harper in this barn, half hidden among crates. How scared he'd looked, how he trembled before letting her draw close. She remembered feeling an odd kinship then, as though they shared a language of cautious steps and careful glances. Now that mutual trust felt so natural that Lucy could scarcely recall their early uncertainty. She ruffled Harper's ears and bent to scratch under Sprout's chin. "If only the stray could see how good it can be," she murmured, thinking out loud. Both dogs cocked their heads as if listening. Her thoughts shifted to the kids who had visited under Dr. Alvarez's supervision. The memory of Jacob letting Harper sniff his hand filled her with pride. She recalled Emily's soft laughter when Sprout scampered around and how Sophia and Marcus had begun smiling. Lucy suspected that if given the chance, the stray could bring comfort to someone too, if only it learned that humans weren't all threats. The idea of one day introducing that wary dog to children who needed a friend made Lucy's heart flutter. But it was a distant dream. After an hour of quiet reflection in the barn, Lucy wandered back to the house to finish her homework. A short while later, her parents returned, arms loaded with paper bags from the market. "The orchard folks say hello," Eleanor remarked, placing apples on the counter. "And we got fresh honey from the stands. Thought you might like to try it on toast tomorrow." Lucy nodded and offered to help put things away, but inside she felt an urge to mention the stray's progress. She hesitated until she found the right moment, then blurted, "He ate again last night. He almost came closer." Thomas paused in the middle of stacking canned goods. "That's wonderful, honey," he said, "but remember to be cautious. If he ever shows aggression, step away and get me or your mom. Promise?" "I promise," Lucy answered, heart fluttering with a mixture of excitement and caution. In the days that followed, Lucy juggled homework, therapy sessions with Dr. Alvarez's visiting children, and her ongoing quest to inch closer to the stray. The therapy group had grown. 2 more families expressed interest, impressed by the quiet success stories. Lucy felt both nervous and gratified. She still struggled with crowds, but seeing how kids reacted when Harper gently rested his head on their knees motivated her to keep participating. Sprout, though younger, displayed a knack for cheering up the shyer children with his playful antics. On multiple afternoons, their yard resembled a small picnic gathering. Kids seated on blankets while dogs padded from one visitor to another. Lucy stayed on the periphery, ready to intervene if anyone felt overwhelmed. She still felt safer observing from a slight distance, but it was enough to know she was part of something that brought genuine comfort. One late afternoon, as Dr. Alvarez packed up the van after another session, Lucy heard quiet sniffles. She turned to see Jacob, the timid boy, standing by the porch with tears in his eyes. Harper approached him, tail wagging softly, and Jacob knelt to hug the dog. Dr. Alvarez explained that Jacob was upset the visit had to end. "He feels peace here," she said gently. "Sometimes going back to life's daily stress can be jarring." The words resonated with Lucy, who remembered her own meltdowns after particularly challenging days. She knelt next to Jacob and placed a hand on Harper's back. "It's okay," Lucy whispered, her voice trembling with empathy. "We'll have more visits, and you can always think of Harper whenever you feel scared." Jacob sniffed and glanced up at Lucy. His voice was almost inaudible. "Thank you," he said, burying his face again in Harper's fur. Lucy's chest tightened with emotion. She felt that in some small way, sharing Harper's gift had freed her from her own insecurities. That evening, Lucy repeated her routine, leaving a bowl of warm food at the fence line. This time, she waited alone, determined to see if the stray might inch closer. The sky dimmed gradually, and the bowl remained untouched. Her heart sank as darkness spread. She was about to turn away when a faint rustling sounded. There, half silhouetted by moonlight, the dog emerged. Lucy felt her breath catch. This moment felt more delicate than glass. She sank slowly onto her knees, letting her arms dangle at her sides. The dog slunk toward the bowl, devoured every morsel, then stood uncertainly. For a full minute, Lucy didn't even dare blink. Her shoulders ached from holding so still. She tried to radiate calm, recalling the lessons she'd learned about bridging fear with patience. It seemed to work. The stray took 2 cautious steps forward, nose quivering. Lucy's heartbeat pounded so loudly she feared it might scare him off. She whispered the same phrase she'd once offered Harper, "It's okay." Her voice shook, but it carried no hint of threat. Another step. Lucy could see the dog's muzzle clearly now, a jagged scar crossing over one brow, the eyes holding a mixture of mistrust and yearning. He hovered just out of arm's reach. Lucy sensed that if she so much as twitched, he'd vanish again. Carefully, she lowered her gaze to avoid staring straight at him. She exhaled a subtle, steady breath, allowing a gentle hum to rise in her throat, a soothing melody she often used to calm herself in stressful moments. The dog's ears flicked at the sound. For a heartbeat, Lucy pictured him stepping closer, letting her stroke that matted fur. But his tension remained, so she continued humming, unwavering. After a few tense seconds, he backed away, though not in a blind panic. It was more like a reluctant retreat, as if uncertain how to handle this fragile moment of near contact. When he was gone, Lucy felt an unexpected wellspring of emotion. Her cheeks tingled and tears burned at the corners of her eyes. She hadn't even touched him, but she felt a kinship in that fleeting, shared breath. How many times had she edged toward acceptance only to recoil, unsure if the other person truly meant kindness? Lucy whispered goodbye to the emptiness where he'd stood, hoping he sensed her promise to return. Time continued in a gentle rhythm. Lucy balanced school, her therapy group responsibilities, and the gradual progress with the stray. Dr. Alvarez hinted that she might recommend Lucy and her dogs for a special recognition in the county, something about an innovative approach to emotional support. The notion of standing in front of officials or local reporters made Lucy's palms sweat, but part of her felt proud. She still caught glimpses of shy kids warming up to Sprout, or exhausted parents relaxing when Harper trotted over to greet them. Each success fed Lucy's confidence, convincing her that empathy was a power she could wield. One brisk Friday afternoon, as she packed her school things into her backpack, Ms. Collins approached Lucy. "There's an essay contest about personal growth," the teacher said. "I thought you might want to submit something about Harper and Sprout. It's optional, no pressure." Lucy blinked, uncertain if she could handle the challenge of writing a structured piece, but she felt a stirring of excitement. "I'll think about it," she replied quietly, picturing the day she found Harper in the barn, the moment she rescued Sprout from the fence. She wondered if her journey might inspire others who felt trapped by their own fears. When Lucy returned home, she discovered her parents in the midst of cooking dinner. An aroma of simmering vegetables and garlic greeted her. Harper and Sprout scurried underfoot, waiting for morsels. Lucy set her backpack aside and asked if she could slip out to the fence for a few minutes. Thomas agreed, but cautioned her again to avoid pushing the stray too quickly. "Respect his boundaries," he reminded her. Lucy nodded, stepping into the mild glow of late afternoon, a small container of leftover stew in hand. By now, Lucy's routine had a comfortable familiarity. She placed the bowl down, retreated several steps, then lowered herself to the grass. The evening sun slanted across the field, painting the fence in hues of rust and gold. For long moments, the only sound was the rustle of dry leaves at her feet. Then, as if pulled by an invisible thread, the stray materialized. He approached the bowl, snout dipping to devour the meal. Lucy held her breath, noticing he glanced at her after each mouthful. No longer bolting in blind haste, he moved with slight caution but also curiosity. When the bowl was empty, the stray stood. Lucy waited. This time her heart soared as he stepped a fraction closer. She managed a small, encouraging smile, keeping her hands still. The dog's nose twitched, testing her scent from a safe distance. Lucy softly hummed again, and he listened, neither advancing nor fleeing. The sun dipped lower, and shadows stretched. She sensed the dog's hesitation, that collision of survival instinct and the pull of curiosity. Another half-step brought him close enough that Lucy could make out tiny flecks of gray in his eyes. The world seemed to hold its breath for a single, delicate heartbeat. All at once, a loud clang shattered the silence, Thomas dropping a large pot in the kitchen. The sound carried across the yard, echoing in the still air. The stray jerked around in alarm, ears flattened, and in a flash he was gone, bolting through the fence line with a panicked stride. Lucy felt as though her entire body deflated, the closeness they'd shared yanked away. She hung her head, frustration stinging her eyes, but she knew enough not to chase him. He'd come back only when he felt ready. Exhaling slowly, Lucy retrieved the empty bowl and trudged inside. Thomas apologized profusely when he saw her crestfallen expression, but Lucy waved him off with a tight smile. "It's okay," she whispered, hugging Harper for comfort. She realized this journey wouldn't be simple. Each small gain might vanish in a blink. Still, she refused to give up, believing that a glimmer of trust had begun. If she could show him patience, the dog might one day step fully into her world, just as Harper once did. Lucy found it impossible to stop replaying the scene of the startled stray bolting away. She woke the next day with a pang of regret, wishing she could rewind that tense moment and mute the kitchen noise. Still, she reminded herself that progress seldom followed a straight path. After breakfast, she set out to the fence once again, bowl in hand, repeating her gentle ritual. Today the sky was overcast and the wind carried a cool hint of oncoming rain. Although she waited for nearly half an hour, the dog never appeared, and by the time the first heavy droplets fell, Lucy returned indoors, trying not to let disappointment settle in her chest. Soon enough, she immersed herself in tasks that demanded her attention. An essay contest loomed, courtesy of Ms. Collins's suggestion, and Lucy struggled to shape her swirling thoughts into coherent paragraphs. The theme was personal growth, an idea that both excited and intimidated her. She pulled out a fresh notebook and started writing about how she felt when she first met Harper, describing his uncertain gaze and the silent trust that blossomed. Then she outlined Sprout's rescue, explaining that even the smallest acts of kindness can transform a life. When Lucy reread those passages, she felt warmth stirring behind her ribs, but she also worried she couldn't fully capture the complexity of what these dogs meant to her. A part of her wanted to include the mysterious stray too, as a symbol of fragile hope. But so far, she had little more to say beyond fleeting moments at the fence. For now, she decided to leave him out, telling herself she might revise if the dog finally let her come close. At school, Ms. Collins announced that any entries in the contest were due by the following Friday. Lucy's heart fluttered with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. She couldn't recall the last time she'd voluntarily shared her writing with a broader audience. Yet something about the idea felt right, as if forging words on a page might help her understand how far she had come. Meanwhile, her classmates chattered about typical middle school preoccupations: an upcoming field trip, weekend plans, and half-hearted complaints about homework. Jared barely acknowledged her, but Mari and Chris invited Lucy to join them for lunch. Eating alongside them, with Harper resting calmly under the table, gave Lucy a rare sense of belonging. She spoke only when she felt comfortable, yet neither Mari nor Chris pressured her for more. Dr. Alvarez scheduled another therapy visit at Crestfield Meadows, bringing a mix of returning children and two newcomers. One was an 11-year-old named Rosa, whose older brother had recently been in a serious accident, leaving Rosa anxious about everyday life. The other was a boy named Peter, who, according to Dr. Alvarez, struggled with selective mutism. Lucy watched from under the shady oak as Harper and Sprout greeted each visitor. She still marveled at how attuned Harper seemed to each child's needs, like the way he approached Peter with calm slowness, resting his chin on the boy's lap as if encouraging him to speak without pressure. Sprout danced around Rosa, who giggled at his puppyish exuberance. Lucy inched forward to participate, occasionally helping guide the dogs or offering gentle reassurance. Though her own anxiety sometimes crept in when more than 2 or 3 people crowded around, she found it easier to breathe knowing the children shared similar struggles. The lines between who was helping and who was healing blurred in the most comforting way. As the session ended and Dr. Alvarez packed up her materials, Rosa lingered by Sprout, stroking his ears with a trembling hand. "He's so small," she whispered, "but he's really brave, right?" Lucy nodded, touched by the quiet observation. Seeing these kids find solace in Harper and Sprout made her chest tighten with an unfamiliar pride. The moment reaffirmed her conviction that gentle patience could break down walls for humans and animals alike. When everyone left, Lucy checked the fence line, following her usual routine. She brought a dish of ground meat, scanning the grass for any sign of the stray. This time, fresh paw prints showed the dog might have visited earlier, possibly when no one was around. A gust of wind tugged at Lucy's hair as she set the bowl down. Then she retreated the customary distance, kneeling in the grass with Harper beside her. Sprout, noticing the hush, sat too, as though learning from Harper's example. The minutes dragged, shadows lengthened, and Lucy started humming softly in that comforting way. Eventually, the stray emerged, leaning out from behind a gnarled tree trunk. His coat looked even more ragged than before, as if something had ruffled his fur, or perhaps he had tangled with another animal. A shallow cut marked his flank, and Lucy's chest seized with worry. He stepped toward the food, ate methodically, then lifted his gaze to stare in Lucy's direction. Harper remained still, ears alert. Sprout gave a small whine of curiosity but didn't charge forward. The stray's muzzle twitched. Lucy sensed an undercurrent of pain, not just physical but something deeper. She forced herself to remain calm, not to exclaim or move too fast. The moment hung fragile in the air, each second a test of mutual trust. When he finished eating, the stray paused longer than usual. Lucy dared to let out a soft whisper. "Please let us help you," she murmured. She didn't know if the dog could interpret the words, but maybe he could feel the plea in her voice. He took a half step closer, enough that Lucy could see a thin streak of dried blood along his fur. Her heart pounded with concern. She debated whether to inch forward and check the injury, but she knew one wrong move would likely shatter his tentative calm. Instead, she held her hand out, palm up, leaving a small space between them. The dog flinched, uncertain, then retreated. Though Lucy felt a pang of sadness, she understood. He left with more composure than before, glancing back once as if acknowledging her presence. She exhaled shakily, realizing that these tiny increments of progress were all they had for now. Inside, Eleanor noticed Lucy's worried expression. Lucy explained the dog's wound, her desire to do more. Eleanor's brow creased. "We can call a rescue group, see if they can help catch him, but that might frighten him more." Lucy nodded, torn between letting professionals handle the situation and wanting to preserve the delicate bond she was building. In the end, they agreed to wait a bit longer, monitoring his condition. If the wound worsened, they'd find a way to intervene safely. Days blurred into a pattern of school, therapy sessions, and writing for Lucy's essay. Each evening, she left the food by the fence. Each evening, the stray reappeared, sometimes letting her get within a few feet. Though Lucy's longing to offer direct care for his injury intensified, she hesitated, trusting that forced capture might backfire. Thomas reminded her that gentle consistency had worked for Harper, and it might be the only path for this dog, too. Lucy tried to remain hopeful. At school, Ms. Collins collected entries for the essay contest. Lucy turned hers in with trembling hands, glancing anxiously at Jared, who eyed her with cool disinterest. Mari offered an encouraging thumbs up, and Chris joked that Lucy was bound to win. While Lucy didn't share his confidence, she did feel pride in having summoned the courage to reveal her journey with Harper and Sprout on paper. When Ms. Collins asked if Lucy wanted to read an excerpt to the class, Lucy shook her head firmly. She wasn't ready to bare her soul that openly. The teacher respected her boundary. The next therapy group arrived on a breezy afternoon. This time, Lucy found it easier to mingle, sometimes demonstrating how to guide Harper through a simple command or letting Sprout show off a silly trick. Rosa and Peter came again, looking more relaxed than they had at their first visit. Lucy's voice wavered a bit as she explained how to approach a nervous animal, but Harper's calm energy carried her words. Dr. Alvarez hinted that the program's success could grow beyond their little circle, maybe leading to an official partnership with the therapy center. That prospect thrilled Lucy, even as it intimidated her. She imagined a day when more frightened kids could discover the same solace she had found. When Lucy placed the evening meal for the stray, she tried something new. She laid out a blanket a few feet from the bowl, hoping he might sense a comfortable space. She stayed crouched several more steps away, humming her gentle tune. The dog appeared with his usual caution, sniffed the food, then eyed the blanket suspiciously. Lucy stayed motionless, breath shallow. He finished the meal, then walked onto the edge of the blanket. For a moment, Lucy felt a rush of elation, but the dog froze. The squeak of the back door opening made him jerk upright. Thomas had come outside, unaware of how precarious the moment was, and just like that, the stray bounded away in alarm. Even though disappointment pricked Lucy's eyes, she told herself the dog had braved stepping onto the blanket. That tiny act meant trust was building. Later, in her bedroom, Lucy read through her essay one last time, nodding at certain lines. She had written, "It takes only a small spark of faith to change a life. Dogs aren't the only ones in need of rescue. Sometimes they rescue us when we don't even realize we're lost." She hoped the words might resonate with someone who felt alone. Sleep came fitfully as Lucy wondered what might happen if the stray never let them help. She remembered Dr. Alvarez's gentle advice to let each living being unfold at its own pace. Perhaps the dog's journey simply hadn't reached that final threshold. Comforting herself with that thought, Lucy closed her eyes, praying that tomorrow would bring another step forward. The following dawn arrived in muted grays and purples with a hint of drizzle tapping on the windows. Lucy trudged outside, once more balancing a bowl of savory scraps. She found fresh paw prints near the blanket and smiled at the evidence that the dog had returned. Whether it took weeks or months, Lucy vowed she would meet him with quiet patience. As the drizzle lingered across Crestfield Meadows, Lucy's days flowed in a steady rhythm of school, therapy visits, and quiet moments by the fence. Each night, she refilled a bowl and left it near the spot where the wounded stray appeared. Some evenings, he ate while she watched from afar. Other times, she only found empty dishes in the morning, proof he had come under cover of darkness. Though Lucy's hopes soared each time they met eyes, their progress remained fragile. Still, she never wavered, trusting that the same gentle persistence that saved Harper and Sprout would one day rescue this dog from his lonely exile. A week later, Ms. Collins announced the essay contest winners. Lucy's stomach did flip-flops all morning, half dreading the results. At the start of class, Ms. Collins held a sealed envelope. "Before we begin, I'm thrilled to share that one of our own placed first." She glanced around, her gaze landing on Lucy. "Lucy, congratulations." A hush settled as Lucy's cheeks warmed and she felt Harper's comforting weight against her leg. The teacher beamed. "Your essay about growth, kindness, and the dogs who inspired you moved the judges. They'd like to publish it in the local newspaper." A swell of emotion nearly overwhelmed Lucy. She never dreamed her words would resonate beyond the small world of her classroom. Chris whooped in celebration, and Mari offered a thumbs up. Even Jared nodded stiffly, a hint of reluctant respect in his eyes. Lucy's voice caught, so she simply bowed her head in gratitude. Harper nudged her hand, as if reminding her to breathe. After class, Ms. Collins asked if Lucy wanted to read an excerpt for an upcoming school assembly. Though Lucy felt a jolt of panic, she remembered how her quiet bravery had grown since meeting Harper. Slowly, she said yes, deciding it might be time to stand up for all who struggled in silence. That evening, Lucy rushed home to share the news. Thomas lifted her off the ground in a joyful hug, while Eleanor clapped her hands, tears of pride shining. "We always knew you had a gift," Eleanor whispered. Lucy's face glowed and she knelt to hug Harper. Sprout jumped in circles as though celebrating too. Thomas teased that maybe they should throw a party, but Lucy blushed, suggesting a simpler reward, a relaxed afternoon spent with the dogs before the next therapy group arrived. Her parents readily agreed, marveling at how Lucy, once so timid, was blossoming into a compassionate force. When the therapy group visited days later, Dr. Alvarez brought Rosa and Peter once more, plus Jacob, who ran straight to Harper with a delighted grin. Lucy proudly explained to them that her essay about dogs and empathy had won a prize. She read a short paragraph aloud, voice trembling. Sometimes a second chance doesn't just change an animal's life, it changes ours too. Through patience and understanding, we learn to connect where before there was only fear. The children listened quietly, and Lucy noticed tears in Rosa's eyes. The moment felt more powerful than any applause, reinforcing Lucy's belief that her experiences could help others find hope. After the session ended, Lucy set a fresh bowl at the fence as usual. With the children gone, the yard felt still, but a sense of promise lingered. She crouched, letting Harper and Sprout settle nearby. The minutes ticked by. Dusk spread across the fields, painting everything in soft violet. Then, at last, the stray appeared. Lucy's breath caught. He limped forward, muzzle tilted, as if testing the air. She spotted the same wound on his flank, scabbed but still raw-looking. He devoured the food, finishing in moments. Usually, that was when he would slink off. But this time, he stood, trembling, and locked eyes with Lucy. Her heart thundered. She extended her hand, still as stone, palm turned in a gentle invitation. He inched forward, each step excruciatingly slow. Lucy could smell his matted fur, sense the tension in his muscles. A bare foot of space separated them. Her hand remained out, and she whispered the phrase again, "It's okay." For a heartbeat, he froze, then closed the gap. His nose brushed her fingertips. Lucy held her breath, tears prickling. She felt the warmth of his breath, heard the soft whine lodged in his throat. She dared not move beyond that, allowing him to define the encounter. Harper, quietly observing from behind Lucy, remained calm, as if showing the stray there was nothing to fear. Sprout, typically bouncy, stayed uncharacteristically still, ears quivering in curiosity. The stray let out a shaky exhale and pressed his muzzle into Lucy's palm. Then, as though startled by his own daring, he pulled back. Yet he didn't run. Instead, he gazed at Lucy, his eyes reflecting a hesitant acceptance, like someone who had known only rejection, but now glimpsed kindness. Lucy swallowed tears and spoke as gently as she could. "You're hurt," she whispered. "Can we help?" He didn't answer, of course, but he didn't flee when Lucy shifted closer. She reached slowly, softly brushing her palm along his neck. His fur was coarse, studded with dirt, and a pained grunt escaped when she neared the wound. Lucy's chest tightened. This dog had borne so much alone. She motioned for Harper to stay put, then carefully examined the scab, noting swelling. She suspected infection. If left untreated, it could worsen. "I'll get my dad," she said quietly. The stray tensed, uncertain. Lucy withdrew, giving him space. She dashed inside, heart pounding. Thomas dropped everything when he saw her expression. "He let you touch him?" Lucy nodded breathlessly, explaining the wound and how serious it looked. Eleanor followed them out, carrying a soft blanket. Lucy prayed the dog would still be there. To her relief, he lingered near the fence, uncertain but not gone. Thomas approached, voice calm. The dog backed away at first, trembling, but Lucy knelt, murmuring the same reassurance. Slowly, the stray permitted Thomas to kneel by Lucy's side. Eleanor stood a short distance behind, blanket ready. The plan was simple: coax him, wrap him gently, and get him to the vet. They moved inch by inch, hearts pounding. Harper's presence worked like a bomb, though the stray grew jittery each time someone new approached. Finally, Thomas managed to drape the blanket around the dog's torso, speaking softly. The dog flinched, a tiny growl forming, but Lucy kept humming that soothing melody she'd used to calm him. Seconds felt like hours. With cautious motions, Thomas lifted the dog into a secure hold. The stray stiffened but didn't bite or thrash. Lucy could see the fear in his eyes, that deep well of old trauma, yet something in him seemed to yield to the kindness they offered. Together they carried him toward the car, with Harper and Sprout trotting behind, as though protecting him from invisible threats. The veterinary clinic was nearly empty when they arrived. Dr. Montoya, the same vet who'd helped Sprout, examined the wound. "Infection, all right," she said, brow furrowed. "He'll need antibiotics and a thorough cleaning." Lucy stayed close, whispering soft words to keep the dog calm. Though he trembled under the vet's touch, he didn't snap. Instead, he pressed his muzzle against Lucy's arm, seeking a shred of comfort. Her eyes glistened at this plea for reassurance. A quick sedation helped Dr. Montoya finish the procedure. The dog drifted off, lulled by sedative and Lucy's quiet presence. After what felt like ages, Dr. Montoya returned with a relieved smile. "He'll be fine, but he'll need rest and consistent medication. Based on his condition, I'd guess he's been on his own for quite some time. He's lucky you caught this infection early." Lucy exhaled, feeling as though a weight had lifted from her chest. She glanced at Thomas and Eleanor, unsure if they'd keep the dog or seek a shelter, but her father caught her worried expression and nodded with a gentle resolve. "We'll bring him home. We'll figure it out." They transferred the sedated stray into a temporary crate in the car, Harper and Sprout watching intently. Once home, they set up a safe area in the laundry room. Lucy stayed there for hours, monitoring his breathing, offering small sips of water. She noted every wince, every whimper that revealed how raw his memories might be. She recalled how uncertain she'd been in new environments, how it took one calm voice to help her trust again. Here she hoped to be that voice for him. The next day, the stray woke groggy but stable. Lucy and her parents took shifts ensuring he had what he needed, offering quiet reassurance whenever he startled at noises. It was as if 1,000 instincts told him to run, yet he couldn't. So he listened to Lucy's gentle humming, let her stroke his brow. Over the next week, he gained strength, though he remained skittish. If anyone moved too fast, he cowered. If Harper ambled near, the stray stiffened, but gradually, seeing Harper and Sprout roam freely, he relaxed. Bit by bit, he discovered that hands reaching toward him brought food or soft towels, not harm. On a bright morning, Lucy opened the crate door, heart pounding with anticipation. He stepped out slowly, glancing around the laundry room with cautious eyes. She extended a hand. He sniffed, then touched her palm. Harper and Sprout watched from the hallway. Lucy felt tears welling. Somehow she sensed this was the moment he chose to embrace a new life. A swirl of relief and gratitude washed over her. She whispered to him, "You're safe now." The dog licked her fingers, a hesitant acceptance. They decided to call him Rowan, a name Lucy found in a book about resilient trees growing in hard places. Rowan's recovery continued, and over time he started exploring the yard. Though he often flinched at sudden sounds, he no longer recoiled from Lucy's presence. In fact, he followed her like a shadow. At last, Lucy understood how 3 dogs, each once abandoned, could come together under one roof, forging a healing bond for themselves and for the children who visited Crestfield Meadows. The day of the school assembly arrived, and Lucy, nervous but resolute, stood in front of the microphone, scanning a sea of curious faces. She spotted Mari and Chris in the second row, nodding their support. Jared sat farther back, arms folded, but not sneering. The principal introduced Lucy as the essay contest winner. With trembling hands, Lucy unfolded her paper. She glanced at Harper, who waited calmly at her side. "Courage," she began softly, "isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet choice to try again tomorrow. I learned that from a stray dog who taught me that fear can be overcome with patience and love." She paused, letting the words echo through the auditorium. A hush fell. People used to misunderstand me. I felt alone, just like a dog waiting by a fence, wondering if anyone would come. But then I discovered that kindness has a way of crossing boundaries, if we're willing to wait. That's why I wrote this essay, to remind all of us that no one is too broken to be saved. Applause filled the room. Lucy breathed steadily, tears threatening to spill. In that moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of unity, with Harper at her side, with Sprout at home, and with Rowan still learning to trust. They were all living proof that a bit of empathy could bridge the widest gulfs. Whether it was a frightened dog trembling at the fence or a child hiding behind anxiety, compassion extended the same invitation. It's okay, you're safe here. Lucy smiled, standing tall. She understood now that every step of her journey, meeting Harper, rescuing Sprout, coaxing Rowan from the shadows, was woven with the same golden thread, belief in second chances. And that belief, she realized, had become her own greatest strength.